right, good afternoon. Welcome to Represents. Today I have the privilege to speak to a sports agent, Brittany Gilman. Welcome to Represents.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a long time coming, and we finally were able to make it happen. I'm really happy for that.
Yeah, it's been like half a year, but I appreciate your patience.
Hey, come on, man. You
I'm
have
all
to.
over the place.
It's all good. It's very hard to keep up with you. You're all over the world. It's very exciting, actually, for me to watch you on, Instagram. Okay, where is she today? Today is here and there. It's pretty interesting.
I can barely keep up with my own self, so I appreciate that.
That's awesome. So Brittany Gilman is actually the CEO of BG Sports Enterprises, which is an international sports branding and representation agency. It's a company that you founded in 2007, right?
Correct.
And
a couple years ago.
A couple of years ago. I know, time flies. So you have worked with many professional athletes. I can name a few. I mean, we just went through the World Cup, so I can name Olivier Giroud for those football fans or soccer fans for North Americans. When it comes to football, Chad Ochocinco, some of the many big names, and some of our favorite athletes. Your clients consist of corporations, you have charities, individual athletes, and talent. You're one of the first female agents in the sports industry, and you were raised in Colorado. So what I find interesting about you is that you're actually you're an athlete yourself, right? So, and you're getting back into competing when we're talking about snowboarding. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Yes. Competitive half-pipe snowboarding.
Wow. And you once represented the U.S. Junior Olympic snowboard team, which is pretty interesting. So what led you to launch BG Sports?
So if we take a time machine back to 2007, I, at that stage in my life, had just finished my master's degree at Auburn University and a graduate assistantship as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. And at the time I was dabbling, my goal beyond snowboarding was to be the first female strength conditioning coach in the NFL. So that was the path that I was taking at that time. And when I was at Auburn, I realized that I didn't really like the lifestyle of a strength conditioning coach. You spend a lot of time in the weight room. You don't really get a lot of credit for the work that you put in. And it's, you have to dedicate your entire life to these athletes, which, I have no problem doing, but it just wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. But I did realize that I loved working with athletes and I wanted to work with athletes in another capacity. So I had kept in touch with a couple players from USC because prior to Auburn, I did a internship at University of Southern California for the football team in the strength conditioning department. And during that time, USC was the #1 school in the country. We had Pete Carroll as our coach. We were going on a three-peat. So it was a pretty incredible and very difficult time, I'm not going to lie, to work at USC. And then went to Auburn and realized at Auburn that I didn't like the lifestyle of a strength conditioning coach, but I wanted to still work with athletes and preferably football players. And I kept in touch with a couple players that had signed with this sports marketing agency called the Sports Link in Santa Monica. And so I called the VP, who was I'd been put in touch with by a couple of the guys. And I remember very vividly having a conversation with him, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I had no idea how to answer that question. I just was completely blank. And I then realized, okay, I need some sort of direction here. I need to figure this out. So he said, you can come back to LA, you can do an internship at our agency. And so that's exactly what I did. I moved back to LA after I finished my master's, and I worked at the agency for 2 months. And they basically said, well, we don't need you. You can come to the office, you can watch what's going on, but we actually don't need or have any work for you. So I was like, all right, well, I'll start my own agency. And, so that's when I decided to start BG Sports. And I also realized at the time that there was a tremendous gap between connecting athletes to opportunities, which fast forward to present day, that gap still exists. Now, there are a lot of sports-specific agencies that cater to athletes in marketing, PR, things like that, and the industry has changed tremendously, but there still is a gap between the athletes and opportunities. And I actually started I launched a software startup in 2020 that seeks to bridge the gap, which is the same objective that my company sought out to seek, is to bridge that gap. And so, yeah, that's a long answer for you and what started my company, my parent company, BG Sports.
That's great. That's great. Do you feel like being an athlete yourself gives you a leg up, in the work that you're doing as a sports agent?
Oh, 1,000%. I think that the mentality of an athlete, and all athletes can attest to that, is very unique. And what it takes to be successful and to get to that tip top level of your sport is very difficult. And I think it's hard for people who have not been in that situation to fully understand. So thus, me being an athlete, going through it myself, going through, retiring and then making a comeback, and just understanding the mentality of an athlete really gives you a leg up in terms of understanding how to work with guys and girls, and knowing what they go through, and knowing how to relate to them and to communicate to them, and knowing what they need. That's something that if you've never been an athlete, there's no way you would ever be able to understand that. Mm-hmm. And I think that athletes really appreciate that. And it's one of the reasons that they do enjoy working with myself and my companies, and, the companies that we partner with, mm-hmm. is because we can say, hey, yeah, we've been there. I mean, I've never played professional American football, but, I definitely have competed at the highest level, and I understand what these athletes go through on a day-to-day basis, especially being a strength conditioning coach for football as well, and also training several professional athletes. Independently, it's you understand not just one component of the business, but I feel as though I really understand almost every single component of being a professional athlete. And that really does bring great value to the table in terms of what I can provide to my clients.
That's amazing. Obviously, sports, certain sports, especially specifically, are it's a male dominated industry, basically, is what I'm trying to say. What challenges have you faced as a woman?
Wow. Well, I'm writing a book about it.
Okay. Well, without giving up too much scoop, if you can give us just a little bit, what are the main, difficulties,
I think some of the main difficulties in being a female in a male dominated industry is that the impression that your appearance gives, right? People often judge you based on your appearance, and they will put you in a category based on how you dress, how you present yourself. And that's been a big challenge, more so earlier in my career when I was first trying to get started and build respect and build a network. It was very difficult to be respected as a woman. And I always, I started out, I was in my 20s, and, it was a challenge. And I also at the time was a professional athlete, and I was a fitness model, and, having to try to balance all those different aspects of myself while being taken seriously in the sport was very challenging. I dealt with a lot of judgment and criticism, and, I had to be very careful on my social media not to post certain things, which ended up hurting me in other areas of my career in terms of trying to be a fitness model and trying to do all these other things. It was kind of like you couldn't post a picture of you in fitness gear, because if a wife of an athlete saw that, they would, label you or think you're trying to sleep with their husband, or just things like that made it very difficult to learn how to navigate. How do you balance this? How do you maneuver through these different areas? And so that was very challenging initially. And just being taken serious, and for people to really realize that I am a businesswoman and I'm smarter than 99% of the people in this room. But, just because of the way that I look, you're going to make assumptions that I'm not. But wait till I open my mouth and start speaking. That was what happened a lot of the time. And, even having meetings where people didn't know what I look like and listening to me on the phone and then meeting me in person, they'd often be surprised. Like, wait a minute, you're Brittany? Like, whoa, okay, nice to meet you. And it kind of, would throw them back, because it's, it's difficult. And you're trying to break into an industry that has a very long time just been dominated by men, and mm-hmm. Some men see women as a threat, and that's been really challenging. And I've worked with clients from all over the world and different cultures and personalities, and you have to be a chameleon. You have to be able to adjust to the room. You have to be able to adjust to the surroundings. You have to be able to read energy of different people, especially when it comes to international business. And when you're traveling to Italy or France, Portugal, and you're meeting with people from completely different aspects of the industry and different parts of the world. And you have to be able to really hold your own and have confidence in yourself and what you bring to the table, and knowing that you know what you're talking about, no matter what those people think of you. And that takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of courage and self-confidence. But that's been one of the things that's been very difficult for me as a female in the business.
Thanks for sharing. And fortunately, hopefully, with your presence, you can influence, that change, a positive change, and things can move in a positive way. You just spoke about cultural, differences, right? Going to Italy, for instance. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in your line of work, there's interactions with, people from around the globe. What can you tell us about, cultural differences and cultural intelligence? How do you adapt to different cultures when you go, let's say, to the UK, or you go to Italy? How do you go about, that?
Well, I mean, I think it takes a lot of knowledge that you have to kind of put in the diligence to understand the culture that you're now stepping into, and researching different components of the culture. And that's going to give you a little bit of preparation, but then there really is nothing that prepares you until you're there in person. And I think a general rule of thumb is to just have respect for every single culture you're going to engage with, and to learn that there's different ways of communication, and that, it's being flexible and respecting the culture and not taking anything personally. And again, having that confidence. So it takes a lot of experience to be comfortable walking into a room where I remember one time I was in Lisbon, Portugal, and my partner had set up several meetings with different agents, and I had one or two meetings. And I remember the next meeting, and it was like, I see 5 men walk through the door, and I'm like, okay, this is my meeting. Me and a bunch of men, like, I'm used to this. But yeah, you just kind of have to do your research and try to understand like certain things that cultures do. And, and it's awkward for them as well, right? Like if I'm in France, and you're doing the kiss on the cheek, like they don't shake hands, people don't shake hands in the UK. And it's really funny because sometimes you come to meetings and like, they'll stick their hand out and you'll try to go give a kiss on the cheek, and it's super awkward, and everyone's like, I don't know how to behave.
What are we doing?
It's very funny, and you just have to kind of be lighthearted with it, and in those awkward moments, just kind of point it out and make fun of it. But it's you really do have to prepare yourself, and that comes down to what country are you going to? Do you speak the language? If you don't speak any of the language, can you at least learn a couple phrases? Enchanté, molto piacere di conoscerla, like depending on the country you're in, because they really do appreciate if you put forth effort, even if you don't know a lot of the language. If you're going into a meeting with someone from a different country and you at least learn, hi, this is who I am, nice to meet you, that goes a really long way. So it's learning from experience. I've been through a lot of situations that were very uncomfortable just because before I spoke French or any other language, and they, speak to you and you like do something and you're like, wait, what just happened? And like, it's really funny, but just again, preparation, as much preparation as you can to whenever you go into these meetings.
Hey, I hope you put those experiences in the book. I'm looking forward to that, to reading that. When can you tell me about the book? When is that coming up?
Yeah, I'm not going to release the title because the title is everything.
That's fine.
I've actually been working on this book for over a decade.
Okay.
And it's a book about being a female in a male-dominated sports industry. And It's a combination of, it tells my experiences and lessons learned. And I don't like to believe in mistakes because I think everything happens for a reason. But it also gives you examples of situations I've been in and decisions I've made. And it looks at those decisions, after it happened. And it kind of analyzes, well, could I have done it differently? And what would I have done differently, and what did I learn? And it also looks at the business with sports internationally and culturally, and it kind of breaks it down. It looks at the professional athlete and the team surrounding the athlete. What is the role of that team? What is the role of the ego How can you have two athletes that are the best at their game and one guy is really nice and the other guy's a bit of a jerk? So why is that? So it looks at the psychological aspect of the athlete, and it looks at, just the overall business of sports and my experience and what I've been through. And it's pretty crazy. Like I'm never out to throw anyone under the bus, but I've been through a lot of BS and I've been through a lot of really negative situations, been taken advantage of a lot. And so I use a lot of those stories to hopefully help and educate others so that they can, if they find themselves in similar situations, that they might have some type of compass to be able to help them navigate that situation. So really exciting. I have an editor now, which is really good because it's keeping me going, because I didn't want to publish the book until I felt like I was experienced and had enough expertise in the space. So I'm definitely beyond that. Over a decade in the industry is like, okay, now I can write a book and I'll feel like I'm worthy of writing a book. But I'm going to publish it this year. Right now we're in the process of, my editor, she goes through chapters with me every week, and I'm really excited. It's going to be a big deal, and I can't wait to put it out there and see what people think. So
wow.
Yeah, exciting.
I'm looking forward to that, and that's going to be exciting. While reading about you, I hear a lot of comparisons to, I don't know how you feel about that, obviously, but it's people compare you to the Jerry Maguire of the industry, the Spencer Strathmore from Ballers, played by The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. How do you feel when people compare you to those two characters?
I mean, I love it. I mean, come on now, who wouldn't want to be compared to The Rock or Jerry Maguire? And I think it's great. I think it's really, it's pretty spot on. Obviously, Jerry Maguire was just NFL agent. I'm not an NFL agent. I'm a U.S. soccer intermediary. So I am an international sports agent, but I work with NFL. However, I don't negotiate the NFL contracts. So
Thanks for the precision.
I do try to make sure people understand that. But the lifestyle, it's very spot on. Ballers was a phenomenal series that I love to watch. And, I saw lots of people I knew do cameos and things like that. And it's pretty spot on. I think it'd be really interesting. Maybe one day we can do we actually have a couple shows in development, but one being like the business of sports internationally. I think it'd be really cool to have a show like that really shows, not just NFL lifestyle, but also the lifestyle of footballers, soccer players, and different athletes across the board. But yeah, I'll take those comparisons all day. Like that's a compliment to me. So yeah, I like that.
That's great. I don't know if you dealt with that. Well, you probably did. When I did my master's in sports marketing overseas in Europe, and when I was there, I noticed there were a lot of preconceived notions of North Americans, especially when it came to football. Soccer for those who prefer, right? And it's like, oh, well, you're from Canada. What do you know about soccer? Did you encounter the same type of vibes when you were there? It's like, well, what's an American person going to teach us about soccer? What do you know? And how did you deal with that?
Yeah, it was more about a lot of confusion in terms of when I say football. And then they would assume, oh, wait, are you talking about our football or your football? And so, I'm very politically correct, and I use football when talking about soccer, and I use American football or NFL when referring to NFL. So it was more, I think people had a very keen interest and intrigue in terms of how different America is in terms of sports marketing. Now, it's changed a bit in the past 5 years, 6 years. But initially, when I started going overseas and pitching these same strategies that we implemented for our U.S. clients to European clients, they were very, very curious, because everyone in Europe, not everyone, but a large amount of people in Europe in this business of sports, they look at America as kind of this innovator and groundbreaker, and we commercialize our sports unlike any other country in the world. And now it's different, right? Now they're much more open to doing that in the UK and throughout Europe, and you see football, soccer, having a lot more commercialism, and a lot of these athletes now have international brand deals and things like that. But back then, when I first started pitching these strategies, they were like, wait, what? What is this? How do you do it? I don't know. And so there's a big intrigue in terms of that. Now, in terms of the knowledge of the sport, I never really had people question me, because I also played soccer, football growing up. So, I'm very well versed and vetted and experienced in the sport. So no one ever questioned that. But I think they were more interested in how do you make that money? How do you market the sport and the athletes individually, which international football is a completely different world. And you have to be able to navigate the world as well. It's not the same as NFL. The fans are different. The companies are it's completely different. And you can't do the same things that you can do for American athletes as you can do for European athletes or UK athletes, just because the clubs own the rights to the players. And it's very, very complicated. A lot goes into it. But, luckily people didn't doubt my knowledge of the sport, because I think I came to the table saying, look, I have this huge clientele in America. And so automatically they respected me and they wanted to learn from me.
That's excellent. So obviously you succeeded in your industry. What qualities do you think a person needs in order to get to a level similar than yours?
I think one of the most important things that you have to have is confidence in yourself and your abilities and what you bring to the table. You also have to be willing to look at yourself and admit when you're wrong and understand that you don't know everything. None of us know everything. And if a situation arises that you can honestly look at it take a step back and look at it from an outside perspective and try to understand all the different perspectives of everyone involved. And be willing to admit when you're wrong. Be willing to admit, okay, you know what? You're right. I could have done that better. I'm sorry. I apologize. Taking accountability. Because I don't think accountability is taught as much as it should in our youth. And I think that it's one of the most important characteristics is being willing to admit when you're wrong. And, what can you do to fix it rather than placing blame or denying or trying to, maneuver around it. I think that's one of the most important things. Number two, I think, in addition to being vulnerable and having confidence in yourself is persistence and dedication and understanding that you're going to have ups and downs. No matter what industry you're in, it's never always going to be great. And you're going to have really, really difficult times where you want to give up. And it's the people that can push through those times and use those times to learn, okay, again, how could I have done something different? What could have been better? What is happening in this situation that I can learn from? That I can become better from this. As hard and as difficult as this may be, how can I grow from this? And having that mindset in every situation is really, really important. And then I would say the last thing is that understanding that clients come and go, that it's part of the business, that, when you work with athletes and you on a day-to-day and you're talking to these people and you know their family and you know their friends, you develop these relationships that make it very difficult to differentiate business from personal, which is one of the hardest things that I think all of us we all deal with this, no matter what industry you're in. But understanding that, no matter how close you are with your client, at some point, it might not make sense for you to work with this client anymore. They might look at you and be like, you know what? We've done great work, but it's time to move on. Things change, things evolve, and being confident enough in yourself and realizing that, okay, you know what? Again, could I have done something better? Did I do something wrong? Did I try to fix that? And if not, understanding that this is part of the business. And you know what? Great. Thank you so much. Great working with you. Never burn bridges. Always be the bigger person. And, walking away, understanding that, okay, one door closes, another door opens. There's another opportunity on the horizon that I'm going to figure out and that's going to come to fruition that, I trust this. This is part of the process, and just understanding that and accepting that.
Does that happen when, let's say, an athlete says, you know what, okay, this is not working. We need to, go our separate ways. And then later on, the person comes back and say, hey, listen, I've been mistake. How do you deal with that type of situation?
Yeah, I mean, when that happens, it's, you look at, I totally understand, but it took me a very long time to be able to not take things personally. And even now, it's really hard not to take things personally. But when it happens, it's just like, hey, cool. Like, if the time that they come back makes sense for us to work together again, great. And if it doesn't, then I'll say, hey, I don't know if this is right for us right now. Well, let's maybe try this company or this company. So, again, it's all about, you got to let your ego go. And you have to understand that what people do has nothing to do with you and has everything to do with them. And I think that's one of Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements is something that I try to implement on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I mean, that's just the business,
Brittany Gilman, thank you very much. Listen, once again, this has been a pleasure. CEO of BG Sports Enterprises. I'm sure a lot of people will learn a lot of valuable information from our conversation. I thank you, and I'm looking forward to reading that book.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.